Welcome, everybody. Don Giannetti from Lighting Essentials. I'm here today with Craig Ferguson, a photographer in Taiwan. That's where you are, right, Craig?
Yeah, in Taipei, Taiwan.
Taipei, Taiwan. And he is a Project 52 student and has been with Project 52 for quite a while and has a full-time photography business in Taipei. So, Craig, it's great to have you here, man.
Yeah, great to be here.
Really a blast. Craig and I talk about every week on the advanced P52 class, but now we're going to let him kind of run the show and talk a little bit about his photography. So tell me, what kind of stuff are you doing over there?
I'm doing a lot of editorial feature portrait work lately, um, shooting for various international publications that need work done in Taiwan. Um, Obviously, with editorial budgets these days going down, it's much easier for them if they have someone here who's on the ground ready to shoot rather than having to fly someone out like they might have done a decade ago when they all had money.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's that. I just did a restaurant shoot yesterday. I do a lot of food, so I was shooting new menus for one of the local restaurants here. So that was sort of 4 or 5 hours in the restaurant, going through their new dishes, which was quite fun.
Now,
Um,
are you shooting those? Are you bringing a set down to shoot it? Or are you shooting natural light? Or
I had to take a set in. The chef, the owner of the restaurant, she was inspired by some natural light shots that she'd seen from a restaurant in, I think it was in Chicago. She sent me the link to their website, and she was inspired by those photos, which were natural light. But the weather we have at the moment is beautiful and blue and sunny in the morning, and then thunderstorms coming through in the afternoon. So I knew that there was no way I could get the same natural light for 5 hours shooting there. It was just going to be changing. So I had to bring in a set and actually create my own natural light. So it would look like a big window light, but I could have complete control over it, and I didn't have to worry when the thunderstorm rolled in on cue.
kept everything in the same color space, same exposure, and not
Yeah,
wandering all over the place. Yeah.
yeah. So I stuck a strobe in a into my largest octabank, and then I put a scrim in front of that to make just a big window source or window type source. Yeah, and then just shot everything to that. So once it was set up, it was just um, work on the composition. I was shooting tethered, and she was checking the computer, saying, "Okay, I want this angle. I want to move in a bit closer on this one, or pull back further on this one." Um, yeah, and it flows quite smoothly.
Wonderful. Now, who did the chef plate the food?
Yes, she cooked and plated it and styled it. She's a very creative person. So for her, she had a particular style and idea in mind, and I just kind of followed through with what she was going for. Um,
Yep, the joy of commercial photography.
yeah, yeah. In this case, it was good because she comes from a creative background. Her husband is an artist, and he's also one of the owners of the restaurant. So they know how things look um, on camera, and they know she knows how to prepare stuff for a camera.
Excellent. That's great, man.
Yeah,
You've been quite busy the past. I mean, I know at least since the beginning of the year.
yeah. I got really busy actually last summer. Um, I had kind of a lull going into summer 2016, and then it began picking up in about a year ago, and it's just been pretty much constant ever since. And then it's gotten even busier again this year, um, which is great. I'm just getting my work in front of the people that matter, and they're hiring me.
Wow. That's a unique approach.
Yeah, who'd have thought?
Who would ever have thought that actually making photographs and showing them to people who hire photographers would actually result in jobs? Oh my God, I wish I had a notepad right here.
Yeah, I think I should, I don't know, put a patent on this and yeah,
Yeah, wouldn't
it's
that
my
be
secret method.
wouldn't that be something? Um,
Yeah,
as Craig can attest, that's what we go through at Project 52 all the time is getting out there, showing the work. Um, Too many people, I think, Craig, hold back because they think, well, I'm not ready yet. My portfolio isn't ready yet. And I keep encouraging them by saying, once it's at a certain point, of course, you have to have a good book, but
yeah,
it ain't never going to be ready. I mean, you can use
yeah,
that excuse for the next 25 years.
yeah. I think there's that, and there's also that just a lot of people don't want to put in the effort and the work that is required to get to these people. Um,
And
because,
how long you've been doing this?
um, well, I st I started shooting, I guess, stock and wire photography for news services a bit over a decade ago. And then as the industries have changed, I've moved into more of a commercial way. Um, but I guess it was around 2008, 2009 that I started like looking into marketing. I read one of Selena Matrea's books and learned a lot from that and chatted with her a few times and um, just kind of try to pick up things here and there and refine the techniques that I use to get to people and find out what works and what doesn't. Um, yeah,
So,
but a good few years now.
so you're one of those 7-year overnight successes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in the next one in a long list of others.
I remember, I think it was Styx or Kansas or one of those college bands that finally broke through, rock
Mm,
bands, and they were interviewing the guys, and they said, "Wow, it's been you guys just came out of nowhere," and the band just kind of gets quiet and looks at the guy and says, "Dude, we've been playing colleges for 12 years,
yeah,
sleeping in vans, doing 3 shows a week, making beer money, and
yeah,
now we're an overnight success." Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's how it works.
yeah,
I
the
was
tried and true way.
Yep. I kind of think it takes 5 to 7 years to get your feet under you in this business. Um,
Yeah, and it it changes very quickly, I think, as well, especially editorial, just because people are not buying newspapers and magazines, and so the industry is constantly changing. So you just kind of get the hang of doing something, and then you find out, like, I don't know, the photo editors in a particular magazine, and then you find out that the magazine has decided to close down their photo department and use stock. And so there's all this work that just goes away because these people no longer work there or
and you got to
um,
scramble to find the next thing. Yeah,
yeah.
it's it's somewhat like it was before because those
Mm,
things happened before, but now they happen in a much more compressed environment. It's
yeah.
just every day is like a new day of excitement in this business. Um, take us through some of your shots. Take us through
All right.
some of the shots that you can tell us that were really fun and interesting for you. And I know one of the great things about being a photographer is you get to meet a lot of new people. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the shot that's on screen at the moment of the president of Taiwan, I guess that's a good place to start, seeing everyone's looking at it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I photographed her. It was the end of September, beginning of October last year. Um, she was being video interviewed for the Wall Street Journal, and they needed a photographer to come in and just get a couple of stills shooting around the video.
Right.
Um, so I've shot for the Wall Street Journal a few times, so they got in touch with me and we arranged it, and I basically had kind of 5 minutes or so before the interview, while they were just doing the last tests of audio, that I could shoot her as she was talking with the interviewer. I had to photograph that, and that was under the video light setup, so I didn't have any control. But I just kind of kept pushing because I knew that, I want to get a portrait of her. So I kept asking everyone, is it possible to have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to make a couple of quick portraits? And she approved it. So I created 2 setups. This was the second one in the hallway outside the office. And it was just like a real simple go-to lighting setup with a single light. Got to move quickly in these situations. Yes. Yeah, and then if I click on the people section, which will take a minute to load, I have got another one of her in here. Yeah, so there's this one as well. So this was the first one I did, kind of in the corner of the office interview room. The same basic light, just one light, and from putting the light down and positioning her in this chair to finishing in the corridor outside with that first photo was only about 3.5 minutes. Shot horizontal and vertical portraits in 2 locations in about 4 minutes, including moving the light through, because she went overtime in the interview, so there wasn't a lot of time for extra photos at the end. So I think that's part of why I keep getting work, because I can pull something out in 3 or 4 minutes. It doesn't take forever to set up and shoot.
Excellent. Are you working with an assistant?
For this one, no. This one I was carrying it all myself. There was the video guy, myself, and two reporters, because we had to go through security checks and all of that. So yeah, I tested the lights with one of the president's assistants, actually, who was in there kind of facilitating things for us. So she was my stand-in model for a couple of test shots beforehand, and I just left my light set up in the corner of the room. I used a speed light on this just because it was easier to move around than a strobe. I didn't have to worry about cables or anything like that, because I knew I was going to have to work fast and kind of pick things up quickly. So yeah, just a single speed light into a softbox on a stand, pick it up, move to the other room, put it down, and do the same thing again.
That's great.
Yeah, so.
You've got to be able to move fast and be quick and be good.
Yeah.
And be good.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be able to get the shot under any circumstances, because you can't go back and say, oh, this problem happened. It's like, we solve the problems. We don't use them as excuses.
Right. Nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah, they want photos.
You just don't care. They want to see your pictures. And
yeah.
If you had a hard time getting a picture, that's your problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I was listening to Michael Yamashita from National Geographic at a seminar a couple of years ago, and he was talking about that, and he was on an assignment somewhere in China where they needed an overview of this village for the cover shot. And he said in the 2 weeks he was there on location, there was only about 20 minutes when it didn't rain. And naturally, he was in the right place at the right time during that 20 minutes when it didn't rain and the sky came blue for a short time, because yeah, you just have to be prepared and come back with the shot.
Oh, those back in the day, back in the heady days of National Geo, the 60s and the 70s, when photographers wouldn't get a week assignment, they'd get a 6-month assignment. Go to the Sahara and cover the water, how water is moved around the Sahara, and they'd be gone for 6 to 8 months on a single job. It was just incredible. That doesn't happen anymore. That's more compressed into 6 or 8 days.
Yeah. Yeah, those days, 6 months on assignment would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess with digital as well now, that's the amount of shots you would get in a 6-month assignment. You now have to turn in the same amount in 6 days.
Yeah, then you're busy, sun up to
Yeah, so
sundown.
you're not
Uh,
shooting less, you're just shooting in less time.
yeah, more preparation,
Yeah,
more you really know where you're going to be and how you're going to get there, etc.
yeah.
Ahead of time. Well, that's cool.
All right, so let's jump back to the thumbnails. So let's see what else is interesting. Um, okay, well, we'll continue along the line. This one is he is the CEO of the company that makes Cavalan whiskey, which weirdly enough is a whiskey company in Taiwan that a few times has been voted the best whiskey in the world from people who know these things. I'm not a whiskey drinker, so I don't actually know whether it is or not, but people who are tell me it's pretty good. Um, so I got asked to photograph him twice in the space of about a month for two different publications. I was out there for the Financial Times, and then a month later I was out there again to shoot him for Forbes. So that was quite interesting because they have a place, this location here for this shot. This is where they generally take journalists and photographers, and this is the background they use. It's kind of their standard shot. So my second time around, I kind of wanted to try and find something that was a different background or a different location. And I shot these ones in the regular spot and submitted them, which is what they ended up running. But there were a couple of other locations that I kind of sent through as alternates that, yeah, they didn't end up publishing them. But it's always one thing I like to do is try and give them choices when I send something through to an editor, or give them something that's a little different to what's out there.
Wonderful.
So for me, yeah, a big part of when I get an assignment is I go and do a Google image search for the person and I find out how they've been photographed before. And I try and, like in a lot of the cases, I shoot business people. So I'm shooting them either in their office or their factory or whatever. So there's a lot of times where they've been featured in that place before. And so I go onto Google Images and I can see shots from different newspapers or magazines that have this person in the same location. And then I try and find something that's different.
Well, that's a great way of doing it. Doing the research always
Yeah.
sets you up for a better shot, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, I think preparation is the actual photography part of it, kind of setting up a camera and putting the light in place is anyone can learn to do that. It's the preparation and the research and all of those things I think that go into making a good photograph. These days you can buy a camera and get on YouTube and watch a video about lighting, and within a couple of months be able to do something that's fairly well exposed.
Even if it's not, they can fix it in Lightroom.
Yeah,
So if you can't shoot it right, you can. I watched a video. I won't mention the name because it's really not important, and it's not. It's neither here nor there about what it is. But it's a young lady who had taken a photograph of a backlit person, and it was very, terribly underexposed because didn't use a fill card or anything on the shadow side, and she just,
yeah,
the photography was mediocre at best.
mm,
The Lightroom work was terrific.
yeah,
By the time she was done fixing everything she didn't shoot right, it was a lovely photograph, and it was a lovely photograph. Period. I mean, I'm not you know me, I'm not a straight out of camera guy. It has to be that way. Not at all. I
yeah,
just think that if you know your craft, it just makes it easier, less time. Um,
yeah,
it also makes it so you can think fast because you can't do this shot um, unless you know lighting
yeah,
and and put it to work. Well, let me ask you
yeah.
about gear because um, I'm not a gearhead. I don't think you are either.
No,
And
I remember quite a few years ago, I heard a photographer. I can't even remember who it was, but it was someone who had had a long career, was very successful, and they said something like, any camera available today is of such high quality that you can basically use it until it breaks. And I kind of take that same approach. So at least for camera bodies, like my newest camera is 4 years old, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And my backup is about 8 years old. But the files coming out of them are perfect for my needs and my clients' needs. I don't need to go up to 50 megapixels or 100 megapixels or anything like this, especially for publication work in magazines and so forth, or just on web as well. So for me, if the cameras are working, I would rather put my dollars somewhere else than just constantly be in this upgrade cycle that is not really, for me, is not really needed.
Right. I totally there with you. I have a 6D and I love it. I have,
Yeah.
I don't really have any desire for anything. I have a Nikon DF, which is same as the D4 sensor, which of course now is garbage because the D5 is out. So, funny how
Yeah,
that
you need
works.
a DF Mark II or something.
Yes, and all the mark this is and mark that. I'm really not into that. I know that some people are, and I think that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
I really would rather put my money into getting access to something that's worth shooting than to have a big expensive camera and not be able to have enough money for a plane ticket. Now, if somebody has the money to buy the camera and the plane ticket, great, then no problem.
Yeah.
But I find that when you're starting out this business, every nickel counts, and it's what you do with those nickels at the beginning
Yeah.
that may not even show up until much later down the road. Much later.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who's a some kind of company director. I don't know exactly what he does, but he's paid kind of more money than most people see in 10 years. He's paid a month or a year or something. So for him, he's a hobby photographer. For him to go out and buy the most expensive thing is like for me to go out and buy the cheapest thing. Um, it's not an issue for him because he's making probably 7 figures a year or something. Um, but yeah, for a photographer trying to start out in business or something, you get what works and you use it as long as it keeps working.
Yeah, if it doesn't make a good image, then of course you've got to move on. Um,
Yeah.
but these days, how much of your work is shooting for print versus web these days? Do you know?
I would say a little more than, there's probably a little bit more print stuff still. I'm maybe 60-40 or so,
Okay.
70-30.
Uh-huh.
But the print stuff is still only magazine sized. It's not massive prints.
Oh,
So a double truck spread would be about the biggest,
uh,
which I've done before on an 8 or 10 megapixel camera.
yeah, I was going to
Um,
say I did several double trucks on a 10D, which was a 6.3 megapixel camera.
yeah, I had a 20D was my first one. I had a couple from that. So yeah, I think that was 8 megapixels. Um, yeah, for me actually, the last time I upgraded was because I was still shooting a lot of news at the time, and one of the agencies I was working for brought in I think it was a 12 megapixel minimum as their requirements. And my backup camera at the time was 8 or 10 megapixels. So I had to upgrade so that I had two cameras that met their requirements.
Well, that's a reason to update.
Yeah.
What kind of lighting are you using?
Um, this one again is a simple one light setup. I like to try and, when I'm on location, I like to try and keep things simple because the people I'm photographing are very busy people. They don't have time for me to stand around and test with 5 lights or something like that. And a lot of the time, there's either no access for assistance, or if I have an assistant, then I'll make no money because there's no budget for one. So I end up having to pay my whole fee to an assistant. Um, so this is one light. I think it's a like I photographed him twice. Once I had speedlights, and once I had a strobe. I think this one was with the strobe. So 500-watt strobe into a big octa, coming from the side where the doorway is. So if it's meant to be kind of replicating natural sunlight coming through a door.
Yeah, what it would look like if you were there.
Yeah, so just off the right side of the frame, I guess about 10 feet or so is this massive big sliding roller door, which was closed for this, but the light's back there.
Show us some of your food. Let's talk a little bit about your food photography.
All right, let's jump back. I'll go back to the front page and do it. So let's see what we've got. Yeah, we'll start from the start. Yeah, so this one again was editorial stuff shot for a magazine. A local magazine would, every issue, they choose a different topic to feature. And the topics don't often have any relationship to each other from one issue to the next. It's just whatever the publisher decides he wants to do. So this one, they did an issue on vegan life in Taipei. So we went around about 6 or 8 vegan restaurants, photographed chef portraits and the chef's kind of special recipe, which is what this one was in one place. And kind of it was quite rushed. We had, in some cases, we were shooting 2 restaurants a day for a couple of days, and then we'd have one where we'd have to shoot 10 dishes in an hour or 2 hours. So there were a few challenges in shooting. But yeah, so a lot of my food work, I'll just jump back to the thumbnails. The one with the shrimps, this one is one that I set myself. As kind of a test portfolio type shot. But basically everything else on the screen, until you get down to the Corona shot, are stuff that I've actually shot on assignment, or either for restaurants directly, like this spaghetti one I did for the menus for a restaurant. Again, directed by the chef. She said, okay, this angle, shoot it here like this. And most of the other ones here are magazines. One thing we do lack a little bit here is food stylists. There are a couple, but in general, the marketplace doesn't put a lot of emphasis on having a stylist come in and do it. So it's either I have to try and do it myself to some extent, or it's just relying on whatever is plated and put in front of me.
One of the things that that always used to drive me crazy was that there would be no budget for a stylist, and the chef would plate the food, and
Yeah,
sometimes chefs plate the food so it looks great to the diner, but it's not
yeah,
really plated for a photographer. And
yeah,
they get real sensitive when you try to move things around, because you're just trying to make the photograph to try to get something where the light will catch it, etc.
yeah. Yeah, well, one thing I like to do, if I'm shooting editorial stuff for magazines, it's not always possible because I'm kind of following someone else's direction, even more so in that case, because there's a photo editor or an art director who's got one idea, and the chef has one idea, and the writer has one idea, and I've got to try and make all 3 of them work in a photo.
Yep.
But when I shoot directly for the restaurants, where possible, I try to meet with if the chef is going to be plating and styling, I try and meet with them and go through a few things first before the shoot. It's not always possible. Sometimes timing just doesn't work, and we have to turn up and just shoot what they put there. But something like for example, this burger shot. This was also for a magazine. But if I were shooting this, and if I could meet with the chef beforehand, I would have them like take a big stock pot or something, flip it upside down, and plate it on top of that. So they're plating it more in an eye level, not looking down on it.
Got it. Right.
Just so they can raise it off the kitchen counters. Because putting it up like a foot closer to their eyes, they're getting more of a camera view rather than the looking down diner view.
That's very interesting. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's often it's just small things like that because they see it from a different angle. They'll notice something. And a lot of the times, their own sense of style, if they're proud of their food, they'll just naturally fix it at that angle because it's something they haven't seen before.
Well, yeah, the mix of viewpoints that can happen on a photo shoot can sometimes ruin that style.
Yeah.
And you have to really kind of reel them in and hold them close, keep everybody on the same page. It's kind of like being a photographer and a psychologist all at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, working with chefs can be really a pain. That's a great looking burger shot, man. What's your is that natural light coming in the window, or are you adding
Yeah,
that
that's
to it?
all natural window light. We shot for a couple of hours in this place, and they actually kind of roped off a section by the windows for us to shoot because I had two writers in there with me, and they were tasting all the food after I shot it because they had to write reviews about it. So we had, a section that was kind of reserved for us, so we could kind of go a little bit slower than normal because this was a restaurant that even on a quiet day, there was a fairly constant stream of people coming through all afternoon. And for this particular burger, the sun just came through at the perfect angle. It happened for about 5 minutes through the whole shoot that just got this beautiful light. Then it went behind a building, and the light was still nice, but not quite this nice.
That little kick.
Yeah,
It's always great.
yeah. I think I actually had something else on the table at the time that I was shooting from. I was shooting down on something, and then I saw this light, and I knew it would be perfect for a burger. And the burger was there. It was kind of like lined up next to shoot. So I just kind of quickly threw it in and got the shots while that light was perfect.
That's wonderful. You want to share a few tear sheets with us?
Yeah. So let's jump back to the front. Yeah. So what have we got? Yeah. So this is the Wall Street Journal ones that I was talking about at the beginning. So yeah, these were this one and this next one. These were shot under the video lights.
Mm-hmm.
So I was told what the white balance that they were using was, so I set my camera the same, but it ended up coming out a little bit cooler than I like. I'm not sure if they told me or they changed the settings after they told me or what happened, but it ended up being a bit cooler than I planned on.
Well, I learned a long time ago that you got to have really tough skin. You'd give them an
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful file, and
yeah,
then somebody along the line would change it. Or back in the film days, you'd have a beautiful 4x5 or 8x10 sheet of Ektachrome, and
yeah,
you busted your ass to get all the shadow detail in there. It was a lot of work and everything. You did all of that, and then you know they get a it had to be color separated, and if it
Yeah.
wasn't a good color sep, then you got what you got.
Yeah.
I've always been kind when I see other photographers work because I've been on the side of like going, my picture didn't look like that.
Yeah.
I didn't want somebody going, wow, Gianetti doesn't even know how to expose chrome.
Yeah. Um, yeah. When I sent through the Wall Street Journal ones, I sent them kind of double options, and I mentioned it to the photo editor in email that this one is as it was set with the white balance they gave me, and then here's one that I've kind of corrected for it, which I think looks a bit better. And they went with the ones that the cooler looking ones. So the options were there, and then I leave it up to them to choose, and don't complain.
That's the way it is. That's the way
Yeah,
it is in this business. That's for sure. All right. Well,
yeah.
we've had a nice little time chatting here, and one of the questions that I'm asking all the photographers is if you had a newbie in front of you. Physical age is not important, but they're a new photographer. They're just young to the business, ready and chomping at the bit. What would you tell them would be the most important thing they need to focus on?
So this is a new photographer who they know how to photograph and they're starting a business, or they're
Yes.
just picking up a camera.
No,
The first
they're photographers, so
one. Okay.
they're really getting into the business.
Okay. Um, I think I would say that unless you really, really have to be a photographer, maybe keep it as a hobby, because you will just do so much work that is not with a camera in hand in order to get that camera in your hand. Um, you will be researching and researching and researching, and you'll be marketing and promoting and trying to get hold of people. And all these things take time away from having the camera in your hands.
Yep.
So I would almost say to someone, if there's something else you like doing that you can make a living at, keep photography as a hobby, because you'll have more time to shoot what you want.
If you're dedicated, and to me, it's like I know what you're saying. I think you have to be kind of like that adrenaline junkie. That
Yeah,
I mean, you have to thrive on challenges.
yeah,
And if you don't, then yeah, it may not be the right career for you. You know what else you have to do? You also have to be really, really thrifty with your money and know when you can spend it, know when you can't. We've all heard of photographers. You're in the business and you're kicking by, and all of a sudden you get that one big catalog job or a great big corporate job, and you get a check for $65,000. And I know
yeah,
so many photographers, they get that $65,000 and it's like, oh man, I'm going to get that medium format camera and those four zooms. And I'm going to get, I'm tired of my Alien Bs. I'm going to go get some Broncolor. And pretty soon that 50, they of that 65,000, they got about $7,500 in the bank and they
yeah,
got a bunch of crap. And
yeah,
uh, the next job that comes along is a $550 job. And
yeah,
it's you got to be frugal. You spend money. I used to say spend money only at the end of the year after you've gone over everything with your accountant, and your accountant says, you know what, you can afford some lights. We can write them off.
yeah,
Go get the lights. Buying them in March makes no sense at all. You don't know what your June's going to be like yet.
yeah, yeah. I kind of work on, I guess, 10%. If I get a big job coming through, 10% is the most I can spend on something um, that I may not completely need. Not completely frivolous, that is
Right.
just a luxury item, but something that can benefit me but is not 100% essential. If it's more than 10% of the cost, it's too much.
Yep. I always tell the story of my buddy who his business was failing because he never shot photographs for himself. He was of
Yeah.
the mindset that if I'm not being paid, I don't make photographs. And his business was failing desperately, and he ended up with a pretty good little gig. And he thought,
Mm.
I am, for me to keep working, I've got to have a Hasselblad.
Ah,
So
okay.
he went out and took a loan out
Yeah.
for a Hasselblad. And even back in the day, I mean, they were not cheap cameras. You know,
Mm.
if you had a Halliburton case with a body and two backs and three lenses, you know, that'd be $12,000, $15,000. Today, that would be like 25 or $30,000. Uh,
Yeah.
and he had a loan payment. And if there's anything that's going to make your life better, it's having a bunch of stuff you don't use and a big ass loan payment on it. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
really good idea.
I have one client that I fairly regularly shoot for that I need to use a tilt shift lens for. And it's specified by the client for the particular thing. It's architectural interior.
Right?
And it's like $2,000 to buy the lens, and I can rent it for the shoot for about $30 or something. And I actually calculated that if I shot for this client once a month, and I probably average maybe once every other month, but if I shot for her once a month, it would take me 5 years until the rental costs covered the cost of buying that lens.
Yep.
And so for me, because it's a 17 millimeter tilt shift, which for anything else I shoot is pretty much useless.
Yeah.
So it's like she calls, I call the rental agency, I rent it, I use it, I take it back, done. I don't need to go out and spend all this money on something that I'm never actually going to make the money back on.
Nope. 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 It's like that 300 millimeter f4 or f2.8 lens that I see these Canon guys walking around with that big old thing with the handle on it.
Yeah,
And every photographer I know is guys. So how often do you use it? Well, rarely. Rarely. You got a $10,000 lens you use rarely. You may not understand finances very well. So
yeah, yeah. I don't even have any 2.8 zooms anymore. Because when my last one broke, which was the 24-70 2.8, I did some research over my photos. I looked at how often I actually used anything more open than f4, and it was less than 5% of the time.
mhm.
I'm almost always shooting at 5.6 is about as far open as I ever go. Um, it's usually somewhere between 5, 6, and 11. Um, so for me, a lot of time I'm shooting on a tripod, so worrying about having that extra stop of light or something is not really a big issue, or I'm lighting it, so again, it's not a big issue. I saved myself a lot of money by just buying f4 zooms.
Oh yeah, if I was going to go get right now, if I was going to go buy the 70 to 200, it's
Yeah,
I have an old 2.8 that died.
yeah,
Something about it rolling out the back of my car and falling on the pavement. It didn't work anymore. I don't know what
yeah,
caused that. But I will not be buying a an f2.8. I'll be buying the f4 for one
yeah,
reason. Same as you. I love doing headshots at 200 millimeters, but at 200 millimeters 2.8, the focus is so hard. F4 gives me just a tiny bit more
yeah,
field, but at least gives me nose to eyeball.
yeah,
And where the 2.8 would give me eyeball to, just to the tip of the nose would be out of focus. So everything
yeah,
I shot was about f4, and it's so much lighter. I can hand hold it a lot easier than hand holding that big, heavy lens.
yeah,
The other, and uh, I won't go through it here, but I have this theory about why in the past we needed f2.8 and why today we may not. At least
mm,
when I say needed, I mean if back in the day when you had ISO 100 film, and then
yeah,
the next thing you had was ISO 200 film, and it looked different. I mean, Ektachrome 200 and Ektachrome 100, the colors didn't match at all.
Yeah.
And so um, 2.8 gave you one more stop of shutter speed. You
Yeah.
could open it up one more stop and go from a 30th of a second to a 60th of a second, which is huge.
Mm.
Going from 250 to 500, no big deal, because if it's sharp at 250, it's probably sharp at 500 and vice versa. We don't
Yeah.
have anything on this planet that really requires more than 250th of a second shutter speed. I'm sure there's, some motor sports racers that would disagree and all that stuff, and that's fine, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about most of the things that we do. So getting that
Yeah.
2.8 just could change your life and give you, give you a 60th instead of a 30th, or a 125th instead of a 60th. And that would be like, from that would be, all of a sudden you're able to handhold a 200 millimeter lens at ISO.
Yeah. That's a
But
big deal.
today,
Yeah.
my favorite lens right now is a 24 to 105.
Yeah. I'm the same.
It's an f4, but oh my gosh, I just absolutely love that lens. I've done headshots with beautiful out of focus backgrounds. I don't have to worry, people go, well, the 2.8 has a softer background. Yeah, look it up. It's about an inch and a quarter. That's
Mm.
about what you're gaining, an inch
Yeah.
and a quarter. So anyway, yeah, very good. Tell me a little bit about how you're getting the word out there, and I'm going to let you go. How are you marketing yourselves these days?
Um, I am basically finding people that I want to work for, finding out how I can get in touch with them, and beginning off by sending them an email to introduce myself. Um, and then kind of like searching them out on Instagram, following them, Twitter as well. I find if they're on that, I will stick them into, I curate Twitter lists. I don't really follow the main general public stuff of public newsfeed of Twitter. I just create my lists and look through them. So I just kind of interact with them on, yeah, the social platforms, um, so that I don't know, they become familiar with me, I suppose. Um, and I guess one other thing, like here in Taiwan, a lot of the work I do is for international magazines from the US or Europe or the UK.
Right.
And they don't really need that much stuff in Taiwan because it's a pretty sleepy place. There's not much going on here that's of interest to the international world. So I kind of use that to my advantage because when I talk to these people and I say, look, I know you're probably not going to need me, or you might only have one job a year. I'm not expecting something every week coming through. And they know that and they appreciate that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they know that I'm not going to be begging them for work every week, saying, "Why haven't you sent me anything this week?" Because I know that, um, especially for editorial, the situation just it doesn't warrant that much work here.
Right. Right. Well, as long as you're getting what you need to get,
Yeah,
which is to build that list slowly and slowly until you have enough people where, well, like you said, you're busy now.
yeah, yeah. There's enough work coming in from a variety of sources now that keeps things ticking over fairly nicely, and then. Um, yeah, occasionally something will come along which is a lot bigger than the usual stuff, and so a whole bunch of money gets stuck in the bank because there's the inevitable slow periods, and
Yeah.
then that money made on the big jobs covers the slow ones.
Exactly. And I need to apologize for any of you hearing my grandbaby in the other room. She apparently just did a header into the couch. So I don't. Can you hear her crying, Greg?
I can hear her, yes.
Yes, I'm sure it's being recorded here. So sorry about that, everybody. It's the challenges of a home office and a toddler in the house.
Mm.
Well, hopefully she'll be better. Hey, Craig, it's been great chatting with you, my friend. Thank you so much
Yes,
for
great to be here.
coming on and meeting with everybody. And this will be up on YouTube actually before it goes up on Lighting Essentials because I'm doing a little test on viewership. but I'll let you know when it is. Everybody, there'll be an email there for Craig, and if you want to send him a note and thank him for taking time out. It's the 4th of July, and he took the day off to do this, which probably isn't a really big deal in Taipei.
Yeah, it's actually the 5th where I am now. So,
Yeah.
but
Um,
yeah,
but it's a big day here, so
yes.
I appreciate it, Craig. You have a great evening, my friend.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.